Patriots Beat podcast here on the CLNS Media Podcast Network and on Patriots Press Pass. I'm Evan Lazar. With me, as always, is Alex Barth, and I'm stumbling on my words right now, Alex, because I just realized that that's the last time I'm probably going to do that open. And that is obviously very sad and a little bit emotional there. So I apologize that I literally almost blanked completely just now and like blacked out as I was doing that, something that I've done, probably 500 times in the last year and a half. And so those that don't know, that aren't on Twitter or just aren't obsessed with looking at my Twitter, which is totally fair, I am leaving CLNS at the end of the week here. Tomorrow is my last day with the company. And just to get right to the point, that means that this is my last podcast on Patriots Beat, which is obviously extremely sad. And Alex and I are going to reminisce and talk about this a little bit to start off the show and discuss what the future holds. But before we get into the future for the pod, and it will involve Alex, so that will be good for all of you to still have Alex around here. I just want to say that when I started the podcast, when I took it over for Trags, we had a couple weeks there where we were kind of shuffling through guests, like maybe doing it as a show where I have a revolving door of guests and things like that. And after a while, I was just like, this is silly. Like, I'm just going to text Alex and be like, let's do this together, because as everybody that is our OGs of CLNS and of Patriots Press Pass, Alex obviously used to work here full time with me, and we used to tackle the Patriots together on the beat. And we missed it. We obviously have a great on-field and off-field, friendship. And so we wanted to continue to work together on the air. So it really took off when I brought my buddy Alex back and was like, hey, we got to do this together. And since then, the lives that we get, the comments that we get, all the questions at the Q&As, the amount of views, whether it's YouTube or on the Spotify stream or RSS feed for the little inside baseball there, the amount of traction that the podcast has gotten, it's been unbelievable. And we just can't thank you enough. I can't thank you enough for all of it. The fact that we can, on a random May day in the middle of the off season, say, hey, we're doing a live Q&A today at 4:00, come hang out. And we have a bunch of questions and we never have to kind of sit there and twiddle our thumbs. It means so much to me. It means so much to both of us. And we just appreciate all of it so much. And I'm definitely going to miss the pod. I'm going to miss doing it with you, Alex. I'm going to miss interacting with the people in the comments section, even the ones that hate us and hate me, or troll us, I guess you should say. I don't think it's personal. Troll us. But yeah, it's just, it's bittersweet here today to be wrapping up on the final podcast. And, we'll obviously remember and hang on to this for a long time, because this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, well said. And congratulations to you. I know you're waiting to announce your next step. I'll confirm. I won't give it away, although people seem to think you're coming to the hub. Apparently I hinted at that. That's not it. So you can rule that one out. I wouldn't let
territory.
him
and I will say one
come
thing,
in and overshadow me.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
I'm not going to the Athletic, okay? Like, everybody thinks I'm going to the Athletic. That's like the number one thing. DMs, replies, Evan's going to the Athletic. I'm telling you right now, it's not the Athletic, okay? I'm not going to tell you where.
You are still covering the Patriots. I think you should make that clear.
Yes. I'm definitely still covering the Patriots. Pretty much not. I actually was able to have a little content meeting this morning with my future employer. And basically everything that I'm going to do at the next stop is really going to be the same as what I do now, so not a lot is actually going to change for viewers or listeners or readers of mine that are listening to this. Not a lot of things are going to change in terms of like my content and what I'm doing, which is great. So it will be pretty much more of the same, just for a different outlet.
Yeah. So again, well said. And obviously I'm happy for you on the bigger and better things, and you deserve all of it. Yeah. So, I mean, for people who kind of don't know and maybe started following this podcast, when we started in January 2021, I was at CLNS before the Sports Hub. I was there for a number of years. We started getting credentialed in 2018, and that was Evan's first year with us. I mean, I think you started a couple days in a camp, right? They told me that I was going to be the Patriots beat reporter and I was going to be the guy. And a couple days later, there comes Evan. And in the words of Drew Bledsoe, in my mind, right, I'm looking forward to competing for my job. But I, you know, I think with you there, we took it to incredible heights. We wouldn't have gotten to that point without you. I wouldn't have gotten to the point where I'm at without you. So we, outside of, a couple months immediately after I left CLNS, which most of which were during the pandemic. So there wasn't much to talk about anyway. I mean, we've pretty much been doing content together for almost 5 years now. So, yeah, like Evan said, I've agreed to continue doing the podcast. I believe the plan, at least initially. So I'm still going to be the co-host. I'm still going to be in the 2 chair. I believe the plan initially is to rotate who's in the host chair, at least to start camp. And it's people, it's people who cover the Patriots. It's not going to be people pulled out of nowhere, but I'll be with a rotation of co-hosts, and that will go until either CLNS finds your permanent replacement or we just find somebody where the chemistry is good. But I'll still be here. I'll still be doing this. I believe the plan will still be Tuesday and Thursday. We're still going to do every day during camp, twice a week during the season. If the dates change, we'll let you know. Follow me on Twitter at Real Alex Barth. But it's been a pleasure. It really has. I appreciate, all the love this show has gotten. When you made your announcement, so many people coming out saying what's going to happen with the podcast, all that, the people who say they look forward to this every Tuesday and Thursday. It really means more than you mean. So this will still exist. Patriots Beat will still exist without Evan. And, there's nothing in the cards right now. I can say this, Evan, stop me if you want to stop me. There's nothing in the cards right now for us to work together in the future officially. I'll have you on as a guest on my Sports Hub podcast at some point during camp, during the season, obviously. There's no plans right now for anything permanently down the road for us to work together. But that being said, if that door were to open, it's obviously, it has to get approved by all these different people. So it might take some jumping through hoops, but if that door did open in the future, it's something I'm open to. It's something you're open to. We've talked about it. I kind of gave the same speech when I left CLNS in 2020, that if there was still a chance for us to work together, we would kind of take that opportunity. Lo and behold, a year later, this podcast came up. So, it's not, I tweeted that Last Dance thing right before we came on. We'll see. We will see what happens. There's a chance that this comes back in some capacity, in some extent. It may not look exactly like this. I don't know what it would be, but there's still a chance that comes down the road. But in the meantime, I'll still be here. Obviously, I'm not going anywhere. I still have all my stuff on 98.5 as well. 98.5 Patriots podcast is still there. Subscribe to Patriots Audio. So we'll see what happens with that. But in the meantime, just you deserve all of it. I hope you're kind of enjoying this week. A lot of people saying a lot of nice things. You deserve all the success down the road. And it's I'll see everybody next week. It's really not goodbye for me. It's just a different person, that other box there.
Yeah, which makes me know that I'm leaving the pod in good hands, obviously, which makes me feel good. And
no, you're terrified. It's going to get so anti-mathy, and we're going to talk Madden all the time, and get ready for that.
Yeah, like you said, Alex and I are always hoping, looking, for opportunities to work together, right? And that's always going to be our goal, I think, probably forever. So, if there is an opportunity down the line, like Alex said, nothing imminent, nothing in the works, but if there is an opportunity down the line, even if it's just as guests on each other's podcasts or whatever the case may be, we're always going to try to do stuff together. So that will definitely be on the table as we move forward. I don't know exactly if it will be my own podcast or if it will be jumping on different podcasts or whatever the case may be, but I'm definitely going to be in the podcast realm in the future still. So I'll definitely, be around in the podcast sphere plenty as well. So don't worry about any of that. You're still going to get plenty of Alex and I, and you can come and tell me that I have a nasally voice all you want or whatever the case may be. I'm all ears. You can say whatever you would like and come and comment and listen to us and all those types of things. as well. You mentioned our first year in 2018. I remember the first day pretty vividly that I had with you. And I remember the very first video that we did together. And I don't think people of the podcast are going to be like that shocked that we talked a lot in the first video.
Yeah, it was supposed to be like 5 minutes and it went 9 something.
Yeah. It was like over 10 minutes long. It was supposed to be like a quick, like 4 or 5 minute thing, post some of it on Twitter, like that sort of thing. And it went on and on and on and on and on. And I remember not only was it great that we could right off the bat, we could do that and we could talk football like that. But I remember you kind of coaching me up and you know, our boss at the time and my current boss, John Zanis, kind of being like, you know, you got to have shorter answers, right? Like you can't go on for like 40 minutes on one thing. And so the reason why I'm bringing this up, not only to just reminisce, is also just because, you know, Alex has taught me a lot about being on air, about
you didn't want to be on air. You were like terrified of being on camera.
Yeah, I really hadn't done it. I had done podcasting, but I haven't really done the whole stand up with the microphone and you know, that sort of thing, really at all. And so that was definitely a new experience. And Alex coached me through it. He easily could have hated me, easily could have tried to, you know, really railroaded the situation and made me look bad or stuff like that. And that was the opposite of what he did. So I'll always be grateful for that. And we'll always remember that. 2018 was a fun year, though, just to continue down this memory lane.
Before we get further down, I'll show you this, and I'm going to send you the full link because you should watch it. But I'm gonna share something here.
Oh no!
So
I don't know if I want to see this.
You don't. Before you were with CLNS, you did some guest spots for us.
Yes.
When you were still with Pat's Pulpit and Herald and SI and all that. So this is the first video we did together. I don't know if I have sound on this, but if you see right here, this is the first video we did together in 2018, right after the 2018
so
draft.
Evan, before we start, I got the list here real quick just to remind everybody.
This was
Patriots.
let's
think against the 7th round picks.
I think you're both like 50
Danny Etling, Keon Cross, and Ryan Izzo.
They love those 7th round picks, right?
Look at that.
7th round picks. That's what the whole weekend season.
And I'm wearing a Patriots t-shirt during this. Like I'm just a total team honk back.
So that still exists on the CLNS Facebook page, but
there's
probably some rough takes on there. There's probably I haven't watched the whole
rough takes.
2018 class. So that's Isaiah Wynn, that's Sony Michel.
Yeah. And I loved the two first. Like I loved Wynn and Michelle. I thought those were great picks at the time, right? Like, you know, I was all in on that draft at the top. Not that, you know, both of them, it wasn't like they busted out of the league or anything like that, but certainly did not turn into I'm sure I dropped like an Alvin Kamara comp or something like that for Sony.
The one thing I remember from that video is because I went back and watched a little bit of it. In me being my typical wishy-washy self, we each did the pick we liked the least, and I said Danny Etling, who was the last pick.
Of course.
Which is classic.
Always on the fence. I think that was like, you know, aside from the fact that we could like be ourselves on the show, which was always great. I think the other one thing that like really got us going when we started working together. Now, when we started doing the pod together, is like we know the buttons to push on each other, right? Like I know that you hate SEC quarterbacks, right? So if I just like say that some SEC quarterback is the next great thing, that's going to get you going about SEC quarterbacks. Or if I start going off about the math, like I know that's going to get you bothered. And I think I can think of probably 500 things that you can say or do to get me triggered. So that was another funny part of the way that we kind of work together and stuff like that is we knew the little things to jab each other about that would get each other going and get the takes rolling. But yeah, 2018, that was a ton of fun for so many different reasons. The success on the field for the Patriots was obviously the best part, getting to cover a Super Bowl together, going to Atlanta together. Yes, we did stay in a Airbnb, I believe it was, with no heat in the middle of February or early February,
or hot water.
or hot
Shout out
water.
to Trags for setting that up.
Yeah, and we had to. I think I slept with like 3 sweatshirts on or something like that, and we eventually had to move out of that Airbnb into a hotel because that's how bad it was. It was. I think we got back one night and there was no internet, and I think that was the final straw, just because we needed the internet for our jobs. So like that was obviously, we can put on sweatshirts and things like that, but once the internet went out, that was like, okay, well now we can't even work here. So that's not going to work. I remember we all went to Pittsburgh, right, in 2018. Watched what we thought was the end of the dynasty, quite frankly, when they lost to the Steelers in Pittsburgh. That game, the game started. They hit Chris Hogan. The Steelers defense forgets to cover. Was it Chris Hogan? Or I think it was Chris Hogan, right? Or it was like an 80-yard touchdown, and he had that invisibility cloak on that he often does against Pittsburgh, and they hit that touchdown. And I don't think they scored again for the rest of the game, or maybe they got a field goal, and that was the rest of the scoring for them.
That was the Joe Hayden pick in that game, and we came back and we shot a video, and the title was, "Is this what the end of the Patriots dynasty looks like?" And the thumbnail was us just looking both ridiculous.
Yeah,
because we like hadn't slept. I think we went straight. I went straight, I think, from the airport to Gillette to shoot those videos. And it was like, is this what the end of the Patriots dynasty looks like? And then the still image was just us losing our minds.
Yep.
So that was a funny one. And then the next week, did you go? I wasn't there. The Miami, I
was at the Miami Miracle game too. Yeah. So I went to that one solo, but I mean, at that point in that season, after the Miami scored the lateral touchdown, I mean, if anybody told you at that point that they thought that they were going to go on to win the Super Bowl, then I think they were lying, right? I point blank think they were lying. And then we went on a great run, obviously, to the Super Bowl, and Alex and I got to go, and I think that right then and there, like our very first year as credentialed reporters, and you get to go cover a Super Bowl, like in person, like that was just wild, right off the bat to do that. And it was just crazy to be able to do that right out of the gate, and to be there with, me and Alex and Trags, and we're there, and Alex and I are very first year on the beat, very first year really doing this professionally, and you're in the same area, same press room as like Peter King and like all these other Big J journalists, and Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport are like walking around, and it's just like that was like a real moment for me, where I was like, okay, well now we're running with the big dogs, right? Like now this is like real, and we're doing this for real. And I will always hang on to that season. But we started out so good, Alex, that like it was only down from there, unfortunately, at least for the on-field success for the Patriots. And then I remember moving to 2019, it was right after that Miami Week 17 loss. You and I were still there at like 2:00 in the morning taping a video about the Titans, right? Because no one thought that the Titans were the Patriots were going to play on Wild Card Weekend. And so we film a video, and I'm sure if you could find that video somewhere, I don't know if it exists anymore. The two of us were just like extremely miserable that not only did the Patriots lose to Miami and lose the number 1 seed, but then they lost the bye, and now they're playing on Wild Card Weekend. I know I had plans for Wild Card Weekend. I thought I
did too. Yep.
I thought I was golden, and then that gets blown up, and they end up playing, and then that was it for Tom Brady in a Patriots uniform. So that was a bummer. Then COVID hits, then Alex leaves, so that was a tough period of time. But then we got to bring it back with the pod, and that was obviously the saving grace of all of this. But man, that 2018 season, and even 2019, just getting to cover Brady, like even though it was the end and it wasn't the best season for the team, just getting to cover Brady for 2 seasons, I know I'll never forget that.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, I don't think I'm giving too much away. You're still going to be on the beat, right?
Yes.
So it's not like either of us are leaving the like we're kind of inching towards this little bit of finality with us covering the Patriots. It's very much not the case.
Yeah, that's true. It does sound a little bit like an end. Yeah.
Yeah, no. That's not. Again, I'm still going to be back on the podcast. You're going to be in Foxborough on Wednesday. Like I'm going to see you in Foxborough on Wednesday. I would imagine so.
Yes.
So it's not like either of us are done covering the Patriots, but yeah, it was, to kind of start the way we started. And somebody just said in the chat, we got 2 years of Brady and then Cam and now Mac. We really kind of hit this. We've experienced a little bit of everything. And I think it's been cool, just to kind of be, have somebody else who's also just experiencing and be a part of it. Right. To go through this with somebody like, and we went through some of the tracks too. And like, he was so over all of it, right?
Yeah.
We were at the Super Bowl in 2018, February 2019. He could not have cared less.
Yeah.
Like he was at Super because he's done this so many times. So, the fact that we started the same year, we kind of had some of those same experiences. I mean, like we're coming from the same background. We went to college together, which we didn't know when we started working together. Although I still take credit for making you quit sports radio, for giving you a 6:30 Monday morning shift on sports radio. I still think I get credit for pushing you in this direction. But
sure.
Yeah,
there's a line of people that want to take credit for pointing my career in the right direction. For anybody, if I'm going to give that to anybody, I guess I'll give it to you. All right.
So it was just cool. And again, hopefully this isn't the end of us working together. It's the end for now. That's the reality of it. It's a business and you got to uphold certain agreements and things like that. But it's been, if this is it, what a way to start a career. What a way to start a career. It's been pretty cool. So there you go.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, there's a lot of people in the chat making guesses and all this stuff. I'm not employed by this new employer yet. So I'm just going to wait until I'm on their payroll until I start announcing things and things like that.
It's not the Sports Hub. It's not the Athletic. Those are the two we've rolled out. And it's not CLNS.
Yes. It's not the Athletic. That's the one I wanted to get off my chest because I've gotten so many messages, DMs, whatever.
To be fair, it seemed obvious. I think that really throws a wrench in some people's plans that you're not going to the Athletic. I think people had that like written in. Now people are probably so confused.
Yep, there you go.
Else we got ESPN, BSJ.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to say no to the Athletic just because I knew that would get people to be like, very, very confused, right?
Let's see some Patriots breaking news now. They've announced the official titles for all their they've announced their assistant coaching staff for the season. I don't see Evan's name on this list. So you can rule that one out.
That's true. I'm not going to the coaching staff. Mike Pellegrino did make a joke towards me that I could join the coaching staff. I don't think he was being serious. I think he was kind of jabbing.
Well, you're not listed here, so
yeah, there you go. I'm not listed there. That's true. All right. Let's talk a little bit about training camp, though. We can reminisce.
Might as well, right?
On our own time. So we have plenty of time to do that. But here, did you see where was it like the media guide or something like that? Here we go. I got it.
A bunch of people just tweeted it.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll start here. It wasn't where I was going to start, but I think it's worth starting here since this is important. Joe Judge officially listed as the offensive assistant / quarterbacks coach now. Matt Patricia, senior football advisor / O-line coach, and Steve Belichick and Gerard Mayo are both just linebackers coaches. No inside outside anymore labels, and no O coordinator, no D coordinator as expected. But I think the defensive side of the ball has been in place now for a couple of years, so that's not a surprise or anything. Offensively, though, go ahead.
Just the one interesting thing there, and you just mentioned this, there's no, like, it's not inside outside linebackers coach for Steve Belichick and Gerard Mayo, right? It had been in the past. I think Gerard was inside, Steve was outside. They've got a lot of guys that in theory could do both and they've had that in the past, but I think this year, especially, they've got a lot of guys that could do both. Josh Uche, Ronnie Perkins said he could probably do it a little bit. I think Mac Wilson's a guy who can maybe give you some snaps in that regard. I think Raekwon McMillan's a guy who could give you some snaps in that regard. And that's something I've kind of been wondering heading into camp here is, we kind of look at the inside linebacker spot and the edge spot, and we've looked at them very separately in the context of this team the last few years, and the personnel sort of dictated that. Remember when we got all worked up about Chase Winovich playing middle linebacker against the Ravens, right? I wonder if this is a sign that there's going to be more, the personnel is going to be more interchangeable between those two roles this year. And it adds to that positionless defense thing, right? So that's kind of interesting to me. It doesn't say anything definitively, but to kind of take that inside-outside designation away, there's obviously a purpose to that. Everything has a purpose. I find that a little interesting. That catches my attention for sure.
Yeah. Let's move over to the offense side, though, because that was a good synopsis of that. On offense, Joe Judge is now being labeled with the quarterbacks, right? He is the quarterbacks coach for the season. Not even like assistant. He's just the quarterbacks coach. This goes back to something that I was going to bring up anyways, because it's clearly a top storyline heading into training camp. Not just who's calling plays, but just who's running the show, right? On the offensive side of the football, because I think in a lot of times, in a lot of instances, you do worry about having too many voices in Mac Jones in particular's head, where Joe Judge is working with them, Patricia's working with them, Belichick's working with them, and there has to be a unified message to the quarterback. So if Joe Judge is the quarterback's coach, and I've been on this take for a while now, and this just cements it for me because they're actually labeling him the quarterback's coach, then he's going to be the one that's going to be working with Mac 24/7, right? He's going to be attached to Mac Jones's hip. He's going to be with him during positional drills. He's going to be with him during meetings, during film, during install, like whatever. If he's going to be with him all that time, and Matt Patricia is going to be with the offensive lineman, it still does not make sense to me from a streamlined perspective that then they're going to get to Sunday and Matt Patricia is going to have the play sheet. That's to me seems like the exact thing that I would worry about with this, which is too many voices inside Mac Jones's head. So I think that in a lot of ways, just based off of the history of coaching and what you see other teams do, and I know Belichick doesn't always go with what other teams do, but when you see the history of how this usually works, even with Bill, the quarterback's coach has got to be the play caller, right? It just seems like it would be way too confusing, honestly, is the best way to put it, to have a bunch of different voices in the pot there. What do you make of these designations, and are you kind of on the same line of thinking there?
Well, so you mentioned Joe Judge labeled a quarterback's coach. He's also, I think it was offensive assistant. The text is just really small on this, and it's not in any sort of logical order.
And it's so definitely on purpose that we have to
He told us in the spring, Judge did, that he was going to work with all the skill position players, right? So that still opens the door for that. So the whole, with Mac Jones 24/7, I don't think that's locked in by him being the quarterback's coach. And what's interesting is there's no definitive second quarterback's coach, right? There's no Bo Hardegree. Now, there is, and this is interesting, Evan Rothstein is listed as an offensive assistant.
I just got to the bottom of this list.
Just saw that? Yeah, they snuck it in there. So for people who don't know who Evan Rothstein is, he came with Matt Patricia from Detroit. They were in Detroit together. They left Detroit together. Or Rothstein may have made it through that season. I don't know. Patricia was fired midway through the season, but they both, started with the Patriots similar time. And Rothstein was basically Patricia's Ernie Adams in Detroit. Yeah. He's a deep dive. We don't really know what he does. Director of football research kind of guy. So offensive assistant doesn't mean anything, right? It doesn't mean anything on the surface, and he'll probably still have his hand in everything because that's why they brought him in. It really seemed like he was brought in as kind of the heir apparent to Ernie Adams.
Yeah.
But as an offensive assistant, if you do have a guy that you think is that bright of a mind, you may want him spending some time with the quarterback.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know that he would be a quarterback's coach in the same way that Bo Hardegree was, but maybe that's your guy that's at Mac's hip. Now, he like I just said, he has other responsibilities too, so I don't know exactly what that looks like. But I think that they labeled him, and I want to pull up what his role was last year because it was not offensive assistant.
Yeah, it's interesting while you're pulling that up because you mentioned that he could be a guy that could be in Mac's ear or helping Mac out. I know you're going to hate hearing this, Alex, but with Rothstein's background of being a very analytical type of guy, it is interesting that maybe he could be somebody like what we've heard with Belichick in the past, that's kind of dissecting the other defense for a quarterback, right? And saying, this is their tendencies. This is what they do. This is the coverage that they run. It's 3rd and 7. Their go-to coverage is X, right? Or it's 2nd and 8, and their go-to coverage is Y. Those are the types of things that people like Ernie Adams do. That's the infamous Malcolm Butler interception in Do Your Job, where he talks about how he logged that play, earlier in film study. Like, that's the type of stuff that Evan Rothstein does. So it's definitely possible, if he's on the offensive side of the ball, that he's there for game plan purposes, for those types of little details that Belichick also often talks with the quarterbacks about as well. But maybe it's just another layer there for Evan Rothstein. It's very interesting that he's now officially on the coaching staff.
So here's his resume. He was with, he went to SUNY Cortland. That's tough for us as Ithaca guys here. Hey, you know what? Whatever. Still the greatest ending. Cortaca 2014, still the greatest ending to a football game I've ever seen. So he spent 2 seasons as an offensive QC at Syracuse.
Yes.
As well as, and he was with their video operations department. Then, so 2 seasons there. Then he went to the Lions. He was the special teams QC. Then he was the team's, oh boy, here we go. You ready? He was the team's special projects coach in 2014.
That I think was literally Ernie's title at one point in time.
No, he was at one point. Ernie's, for the majority of his career, was the director of football research. But
so at one
that
point
doesn't mean anything.
So Michael Lombardi,
projects coach.
Special projects was Michael Lombardi as well in the 2000.
That sounds right.
Patriots.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then he goes from special teams QC, quality control. He's the team's special projects coach for 1 year. Then it says promoted. So I guess we don't know what special projects mean, but supposedly this is a step up. Was promoted to offensive assistant / research and analysis.
Sure.
From 15 to 17. And then
for the math.
2 years after that, he was the head coach assistant of research and analysis. So maybe start doing more on the defensive side of the ball. Then he didn't have a title. He was just there. It says Rothstein worked with the coaching staff in all facets of preparation for the team's weekly opponents, in addition to assisting head coach Matt Patricia. That was 18 to 20. And then he came to New England, and last year his title was just research and analysis / coaching.
Right.
So all over the place.
So what he does is very similar to what Ernie did.
Right.
But now he's officially on the coaching staff, which tells you that they, in my mind, they're going to use him for game planning. I don't think that this is the guy that's going to be, working on Mac Jones's footwork and quarterback drills, right? I think this is going to be the guy that really talks about tendencies for the other team and scouts the other team and does a deep dive into that sort of thing. So very interesting coaching staff developments. As I mentioned, the setup right now.
So one more thing I want to add, and I just want to parrot something I heard Scott Zolak say on 98.5 The Sports Hub this morning, but it was very interesting. There's been a lot of some comparisons made to the last time Bill didn't have an OC or a DC, which was in Cleveland.
Yeah.
Right. And then early on where that came from, there was actually a similar setup with Parcells at one point here when Zoe played here. And what he said was what would happen sometimes, especially in key situations in the game, or just whenever he felt like it, Parcells would go to whoever was calling the plays and say, hey, run it. Hey, let's go. Hey, they can't stop the run it. Hey, they're really biting. Let's go play action. Hey, we should throw here. Hey, let's go run past these next two, right? And Zoe kind of insinuated it could be something like that. And that's really interesting, where you may have a play caller calling the actual, let's go, spread Y right, spider 2 Y banana, which I don't know if that's in their playbook or not at this point. The Bruins hired somebody named John Gruden yesterday. Spider 2 Y banana has been in my head. It might be a coach that's saying, hey, let's go spider 2 Y banana here. But they're saying that because Bill said to them, hey, I want to go play action right now.
Right.
And that would make a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
For them to do at this point, where you have somebody choosing the exact play, but Bill still is kind of picking the overall philosophy, the overall theme of the offense. Maybe he's the one coming up with the script, the first 10 plays of the game, the first whatever it is plays of the half, right? I heard Zoe say that today. that makes a ton of sense. That would make a lot of sense for it to be that sort of operation on both offense and defense. Hey, let's blitz here. Hey, we've kind of given them this look. We've kind of given them a bunch of single high here. Let's try cover 3 and just drop a cover 3 in here and see how they react. And then a different coach picks the actual assignment. That makes a lot of sense. So that would be interesting.
From what I've heard, the 2019 season on the defensive side of the ball was a lot like that, right? Because Brian Flores takes a job with the Miami Dolphins after Super Bowl 53, and they go with the Steve Belichick, Gerard Mayo tandem. And it wasn't really until around halfway through 2019 that Steve really started to take the play sheet. And at that point, that was definitely a way of how they did things, right? Where Bill was kind of coming in over the top and being like, hey, we've kind of played coverage. Let's blitz here, right? We played coverage the whole game. Maybe we catch them with a blitz here and catch them by surprise. Whereas then maybe like you were saying, the actual call is maybe made off of a sheet that's got a few selections there for Steve Belichick based off the game install, based off the game plan of the 4 or 5 blitzes that they like against that opponent. So it's a way of kind of, it's a succession line, right? It's a lack of a better way of putting it. It's kind of dumbing it down for the play caller where he doesn't have as much of that run pass or blitz coverage type of analysis to get into. And it's more like, this is what we're doing. You pick the play out of the hat that we're running based off of that. That's a good way of looking at it. I think that would be a really interesting way of doing it. I am not by any means ruling out Bill Belichick himself calling plays at some point on the offensive side of the ball. We know one thing from Bill, and you can tell based off of this coaching staff, there's no actual title, OC or DC. He's not going to just hand out responsibilities just because somebody's got to do it, right? If he doesn't feel like somebody is up for it, ready for it, whatever you want to put up, call it, he's not going to put that responsibility on somebody that's not ready for it. So if he doesn't feel like Matt Patricia or Joe Judge or Troy Brown gets into it or Nick Caley gets into it or whatever the case may be, if they don't feel like they are ready for it, then I wouldn't rule out Bill himself calling the offensive plays and having the sheet. And I think that'd be really cool. I would love to see what a Bill Belichick called offense looks like. We know what a Bill Belichick defense looks like when he calls it, right? Well, what's a Bill Belichick offense look like? Like, what are his true philosophies? What was Josh McDaniels and what was, his influence and what was Bill's? Like, that was always the tough thing for me was like, okay, like they're conservative sometimes on 3rd and 4th down, but was that a Bill decision? Is that a Josh decision? Like who's making those types of decisions? I think it's going to be really interesting to see if that's the way it goes. Just like, what is Bill Belichick, the OC? Like what is his thing? What is he like doing? And that will be very, very interesting. And along these lines, not just about the responsibilities, we've talked a lot about the scheme itself. And honestly, they put this out there. Like, this wasn't just us creating this. Like, they talked about the scheme changes, especially the players have talked about the scheme changes. You've heard some rumblings about like McVay Shanahan stuff. You've heard some rumblings about Alabama type of stuff. I think ultimately once we get to pads, which is a week from Monday, we think is going to be the first day of full padded practices at training camp. That's when we really start to see what this offense is actually going to look like. But at this point in time, if you had to predict, Alex, which way do you think this ultimately goes? And do you think it will be a very big difference? Like when people turn on that first preseason game, maybe they don't give too much away then. But okay, let's say September 11th,
week one,
week 1 against Miami. What's that going to look like? Are they really going to look that different?
I mean, they're not going to have a fullback, so it'll look different, right? I still don't see them going the Shanahan route, especially with some of the offseason moves they made. Like, they didn't, outside of axing a true fullback, they didn't do a lot that lines up with that.
Yeah.
I still think it's going to be something similar to what they've done in the past. We heard that there were some former assistants in the building, right? And now I'm blanking on who they were. That it was
Bill
reported.
O'Brien was the big one.
Bill O'Brien was one, and who was the other one?
Did Jed Fish come and say hi?
Jed Fish, yeah. That's who it was. So, I mean, those are guys that are more traditional, drop back, spread it out, right?
Yeah.
I still think that. And again, the moves they made you bring in Devontae Parker, you bring in Tyquan Thornton. That makes Nelson Aguilar a lot more versatile. You don't need him just at the X, which is probably the best. A versatile role is probably the best role for him. Pierre Strong is a guy who can do a lot at the running back position. Isn't just a pure. I know he was the fastest back at the combine. Usually that guy's just a burner. I don't think Pierre Strong's just a burner. I think he's a really well-rounded running back. The comp I made when they picked him was a slightly faster Rex Burkhead. I'm sticking with that. I think they go back to a little more of what it was. I don't want to say like when Brady left, because they had to make some adjustments when the cupboard ran dry to pass catcher positions in like 2019, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to say 2017 because that offense was so good with Brandon Cooks, right? They're not there yet. Maybe they get there, but maybe like that 2018 offense sans a fullback. Like some of that stuff, I think they go back to more of that with more of an emphasis on a modern slot. That's what I think ultimately the plan is. Yeah. And you know what I think will tell us a lot too? I think what happens with Jacoby Myers. If they give Jacoby Myers an extension, that tells us, like during camp, that tells us that they're going back to like the 2016, 17, 18 path, and he's going to be in the Edelman role. If not, that tells us that they're shifting to either the Shanahan thing or maybe more Alabama like with that speed slot.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see where this scheme goes. What I am still going to harp on, and I know I'm like the RPO broken record, right? But it's not just RPOs, it's motion, it's modernizing the scheme, right? And I think that's where they really ultimately want to head, is they've got to keep up. Like they've got to really keep up with the times and the way that things are sort of broken out. And I think that's what the goal is here. And I think the other goal is clearly that between McDaniels and Brady, they were so entrenched in the terminology and the way that they did things under the former OC that it became like only those two guys really knew what was going on, right? And now that Brady's gone, especially now that McDaniels is gone, it really is difficult to teach that intricacies of that detailed of a scheme to a whole new group of players with whole new coaches, right? With a whole new group of coaches. Right. So I think the streamlining, it comes from that. But the closer and closer that we get to training camp and to next Wednesday, the more Alabamification murmurs are starting to surface, right? That's starting to be a little bit more out there. So we'll see what ends up happening. There were just an announcement on the PUP players. Look, I don't ever overreact to PUP lists before training camp even starts, because we see all the time that players are put on the PUP list initially, and it's like one day into practice and they're already off the PUP list, right? So David Andrews, Jonathan Jones, Raekwon McMillan, Jabril Peppers, and James White are starting camp on the PUP list, the physically unable to perform list. Jonathan Jones has been healthy. He was out there during minicamp. It wasn't even like in a red jersey. Now, granted, it's not pads and there's no real contact, but I'm just saying, like, he had no limitations at minicamp. Andrews was a little bit limited during minicamp. He didn't do much. I think a lot of that's because he's a veteran, though, right? And there's really not much to push at that point, especially for offensive line. McMillan, he was a real full go in minicamp. So unless it's a new injury, which you never know with him.
You know, they're sometimes careful for him and Peppers. They're sometimes careful with the guys coming off
their rehab. That's the way I feel about Jonathan Jones as well. Yeah,
that's not out of character. The only one that surprised me a little bit is Andrews. The rest of them, that totally tracks. What does surprise me and is encouraging is Marcus Jones, not on there, not on NFI. Yeah. So he had, I think he had double shoulder surgery, right? In the offseason.
Healthy enough to do some things, right?
And he was right. And remember, he was in red all spring. He was in the non-contact jersey all spring. So it looks like he's good to go. It looks like he's full go. So that's really encouraging. Obviously he's in red. We didn't get to see a ton of him in the spring. He's a guy I was really looking forward to watching. So there's the lighter side of it is Marcus Jones apparently good to go.
James White, No, James White is not a surprise at all, obviously. No. I think that out of all the names, I am not concerned about any of the first 5 names that I rattled off, or whatever it was. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4 names. Because I think those guys are going to come off the PUP list pretty quickly. Andrews, McMillan, Peppers, Jones. I wouldn't be surprised if Jonathan Jones isn't even on the PUP list when we get out there on Wednesday, right? I think that he's somebody that was clearly a full go. James White is on my list here of storylines, and I find this one really something that they absolutely need to monitor, and we need to monitor and think about. Mac Jones is the type of quarterback, just like Tom Brady before him, that checkdowns is a huge part of keeping yourself ahead of the chains because you are not a mobile quarterback. So with mobile quarterbacks, let's say Lamar or Kyler or whatever, they can be their own check down, right? So there's nothing to open downfield. They take the 3 or 4 yards, run out of bounds, and they live to see another play. With a guy like Mac, checking the football down to a player like James White, having that reliability of somebody like James White out of the backfield. We saw how successful even throwing to Brandon Bolden that he was at times last year. This is a big, big thing for, I think, for this offense. Bolden's not here anymore. We hope that Pierre Strong can eventually develop into this guy, but that's a big ask year one. Maybe JJ Taylor gets some opportunity here. We saw Ty Montgomery work out of the backfield a little bit in minicamp. James White's health and whether or not he starts the season on the active list, whether he can even play at the same level that he played at in the past. This is a big X factor for them going into this season.
Yeah, I think it's monumental. And people are mad during the draft. They have so many running backs. Why do they need a running back? This was why. The depth wasn't what it appeared to be on the roster. And that is such a crucial role, Evan. You're right. I thought Brandon Bolden, he actually exceeded my expectations filling in last year, but it still just wasn't the same. You need a guy in that role who can really thrive in that spot. And that wasn't exactly Bolden's skill set. I think Pierre Strong should be viewed as the favorite. I think he's the best fit. The funny thing is, like, Ramondre and Damian Harris can catch passes. They did so in college and did it well. This actually goes back to Sony Michel. Sony Michel was a good receiver in college too, but they seem to kind of pigeonhole these early down backs into just that role.
Yeah.
There's very few guys they have do both. You know, Rex Burkhead's the guy that comes to mind there, but they need that guy. They need a guy who's going to catch passes out of the backfield. It's a big thing. And I think, you know, if it's not Strong, it gets interesting. I think then they have to kind of put Ramondre in that spot. I'd go Ramondre over Harris just because I think Ramondre is such a good blocker, but this is a big opportunity for Pierre Strong. And I'm not going to fall into the trap again. Last year, everybody remembers me. They redshirt all their running backs. None of the first round backs ever play. See Ramondre in 2022. I was an idiot.
Okay, we were both on that train. We were both very wrong. But the difference is that the early down back role doesn't involve blitz pickup. It doesn't involve route running. It's a much more simplified role, right? It's make the read and run with the football and protect it, right? Well, those are your three things. Make the correct read, run with the ball, protect the football. Like if you get the 5 yards that are blocked, they actually don't. A lot of time they don't even care, right? Like just get the 4 or 5 yards and keep us ahead of the chain. So that role is much easier to play than the James White role is. It's night and day in terms of the mental workload that they have.
The flip side of that though is they need somebody right now. It's not a matter of we want to redshirt him. Well, they may not have an option. They may just not have the bodies, right? If not him, who? That's what it might come down to. Are you going to use Ramondre? And look, I think Ramondre in that role would be great. I really do. I just don't think they're going to do it. But basically, they're going to have to do something they don't want to do. Either Ramondre is going to have to play a significant percentage of the snaps, splitting 2 roles, or they're going to have to put a rookie in that spot. I don't think JJ Taylor can maybe give you some snaps there, but I don't think he can be the primary guy. He's not a good enough blocker. Obviously, if James White comes back, it changes the conversation. But if he's not there, I don't think Kevin Harris is that guy. I mean, he got 21 passes his last year in college, which isn't bad, but he's not that level of receiver. Again, maybe you go Damian Harris, but if you're going to go that route at that point, to me, you go Ramondre. And I think I feel like I'm missing a back, but that's it. So at a certain point, they're going to have they have to break a trend one way or the other. It's which trend do they break? Yeah,
I think ultimately it might have to be Ramondre. Like I think that he's probably got the best skill set for it. That isn't a rookie, right? That isn't Pierre Strong. It's going to be an interesting thing to look at. And I would also just mention again to not completely sleep on a guy like Ty Montgomery in that role, just because he's got the experience. He's very Brandon Bolden-ish. He's a professional. He's been around the block. He's played the pass catching back role in other systems. He's played that role in New Orleans in particular, which has some overlap with what the Patriots do in terms of that particular role and assignment. They have a lot of option routes and things like that coming out of the backfield for those guys like Alvin Kamara. So I think that is a possibility as well.
So that let me because that is the guy I forgot because he's listed as a wide receiver. So Ty Montgomery is very interesting here for a number of reasons. Can he fill that role? How do they view him? Because I think something we're going to talk about when we get later in a camp is, and we're really starting to do the roster stuff, right?
Yes.
Are they keeping 6 receivers? 5 guys are a lock. Are they keeping 6? If Montgomery makes the team, is he the 6th receiver or is he a 4th or 5th running back? And then if that's so if Ty Montgomery is here to be in that, and this is where we get into the stuff, and I've written about this for 98.5, and I love this, right? The at-large roster spots. The 5 or 6 spots that can truly be won by just the best player on the roster, regardless of position. If Ty Montgomery makes a team, but they view him as a running back, well, that opens the door for, I know a lot of people want to talk about Trey Nixon. I think Christian Wilkerson could be in play there as well. Maybe a little Jordan Humphrey. Well, if he makes the team in that role, but they still view him as a 6th receiver, and they're still going to keep 4 running backs, well, they're not keeping 4 running backs and 7 receivers. So, that might box those guys out. You get into the 3rd tight end conversation too. So that Ty Montgomery makes this thing really interesting. He's a true wild card. And that's going to be something that's fascinating to watch down the step here, down the stretch. It's
difficult because when I did my initial 53-man roster projection after minicamp, if you keep, like you were saying, this is an example, if you keep Ty Montgomery on the roster, it's really hard to find a spot for Trey Nixon, or it's really hard to carry 3 tight ends at that point, right?
Right.
So it gets really tricky when we talk about numbers at skill positions just in general. Well, you can only carry so many skill guys on the offensive side of the ball. You got other needs and other holes to fill. So maybe ultimately they used it last year a lot. I think they're going to use it this year a lot. Is it possible that a guy like Ossie or Dalton Keene, someone along those lines, is signed to the practice squad, and then if they feel like they need to, they can game day elevate that player to get a third tight end on the game day roster, and maybe they deactivate, one of the younger receivers like a Nixon or a Thornton or something like that, but they want to get those guys on the 53 to protect them. I think that that's certainly a way that they might go about this in some of those spots, because like you said, it's ultimately about keeping the right 53. You got to keep all the numbers that you need, but you also want to keep some of the better players that you have in your camp. You don't want to cut guys that you think are NFL players on a regular basis. So maybe that's the way they go about it is, okay, we know we need Ty Montgomery to have a game day role because he's going to be the 3rd down back until James White comes back. But we love Trey Nixon. We don't want to let him get to waivers. So we're going to end up cutting Ossie and Keene and hoping one of them lands back with our practice squad. And that might be the solution. So it's really, really interesting to see this with the running backs with James White. No surprise they're starting the season on PUP, and we'll see where that goes for the rest of those guys. Though, as I mentioned earlier, I wouldn't really lose too much sleep over the fact that those guys are technically starting on PUP. I think they'll be off pretty quickly.
So I'm looking at the schedule here. David Andrews is actually scheduled to speak on Tuesday ahead of camp. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, I think that he's going to be just fine. Okay, a couple of more things here before we wrap. I think the other big question that we haven't really tackled, we talked to linebackers, we've talked a lot about offense, but I want to talk about one more thing on the offense, and that's the offensive line. We came out to minicamp in OTAs, or merely minicamp because Isaiah Wynn didn't go to OTAs. We came to minicamp, and Isaiah Wynn was a right tackle, and Trent Brown was a left tackle. Do you expect on Wednesday, when the starting 5 offensive linemen roll out there with Mac Jones, that it's going to be the same that it was in minicamp?
I don't know, because they kept pushing the, we want to be prepared, and that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
It just feels like such a drastic change out of nowhere. It's like, I know I should say yes, like, why would they practice like that if they don't plan on doing it? But I don't know. It's one of those things when that's the line week 1, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, it does feel like with Shaq Mason gone, with Ted Karras gone, who I think it can consider him a starter that's not returning because he did start down the stretch last year, to then flip the tackles and have new guards in there, have a rookie. I think the one theory that, again, that I'll fall back on that makes me think that maybe this is here to stay is the Cole Strange theory, where maybe they don't trust Isaiah Wynn next to Cole Strange. I think Isaiah Wynn has had some issues playing next to younger guards. Like it was a struggle there with Mike Onwenu last year in the beginning part of the season for that tandem on the left side. I wouldn't be surprised if they look at it and they think Andrews and Trent Brown are two of our best linemen, maybe our two best linemen. And at least maybe, I know Trent's not necessarily the most, he's got some injury prone issues, but easily the most consistent guys when they're out there. Like, exactly what you're getting out of those two players. So I do wonder if maybe they're looking at it thinking of setting up Cole Strange with the most kind of just steadiness from his left to his right. And maybe that's what the idea is there.
Yeah, I'd buy that.
All right.
We haven't done a show since the Wynn trade while we're on offense before.
N'Keal Harry trade. Yeah.
The N'Keal Harry trade. Thank you.
Yeah, that's true. I was on vacay when they traded N'Keal Harry. I don't have much to say that we haven't already said about N'Keal Harry. I think the one thing I'll say about the trade is it made absolutely no sense to carry N'Keal Harry into training camp on the roster. Not even just from a sheer reps perspective. Every rep that N'Keal Harry took at minicamp, it felt like a wasted rep. And I'm not just talking about his effort. I'm just talking about the fact that I would just much rather give that rep to Tyquan Thornton, or give that rep to Devontae Parker, or give that rep to Trey Nixon, even though he's kind of a slot guy. The point is that you talk about volume, talk about numbers. Every single time they rolled N'Keal Harry out there for a rep, I was like, well, this is a waste of time. It's almost like at sometimes I feel that way, with quarterbacks. Like, I want to see Zappy and I want to see Mac obviously get the majority of the reps in this camp, right? I don't think Brian Hoyer needs to get a ton of training camp reps. N'Keal is way beyond that. Like, it just felt like a waste of time. So I'm glad that they got out of this before camp even began, because it felt like it just was going through the motions on both sides in minicamp.
I'll just say this. I think N'Keal's going to make the Bears. Go look at that roster. Go look at the other receivers they have. They're middling, and even among their best guys, there's no size. I think it's week 7. They play Chicago here, Monday Night Football. The biggest return Gillette has seen in years, perhaps ever, of a former Patriot coming back. Yeah, I think he's going to make the Bears. That's my take.
Yeah, I definitely think he's going to make the Bears. All right, move over to defense. Let's do these like a little bit more rapid fire because we got to wrap this here.
Yeah.
Cornerback. Still big competition, right? Cornerback. Yep. I think I'm ready to say that Jalen Mills is let's say he's penciled in. He's not Stephon Gilmore, so I don't think he's
not Sharp. It's not Sharpie, but he's penciled in as boundary CB1. That's
right. So who's opposite of him? Who's potentially could even unseat him if he does have a follow up? But I think we can pencil him in. So I think we're let's more go with who's opposite of him come week 1 in Miami.
I'd love to see it be Jack Jones or Malcolm Butler. I think they're both high upside, high risk guys for different reasons, obviously different ends of the age spectrum. But, Jones, if he can kind of figure it out as a young guy, I think he's got some great natural talents that could elevate him. For Malcolm Butler, if he can get back to the way he played in 2020, he's a solid number 2 corner. The question is just at his age after a year off, can he get back there? Right? At 32 years old, there were only 6 corners age 30 or older that played more than 10 games last year. That's not to say he can't do it. Statistics mean nothing to the individual, but the odds are stacked against him. And then I think you have Terrence Mitchell as the safe fallback option. I think between Jack Jones and Malcolm Butler, I think one of those guys pops enough to get the significant number of those snaps. But again, it's going to be a rotation. I've said that. I'll keep saying it. I don't think it's going to be 2 guys at 95%. I think it's going to be Jalen Mills at around 85, 90, and then probably 2 guys of the 3 of Butler, Jack Jones, and Terrence Mitchell in like the 60s.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's interesting though, because I don't think a lot of people are talking a ton about Terrence Mitchell. Last year with the Texans, and I know it's the Texans, I know they were bad, I know they picked at the top of the draft, but if you go watch his tape with Houston, he held up as a starting outside corner in the league last year, a guy that can see 90 targets in a season and not be a complete liability. Someone that can stay afloat in that spot. And for this year, that's probably what they're looking for. Guys that are fundamentally sound, that can tackle, that are scheme versatile, and that can just survive out there on an island at times. That I think is Terrence Mitchell. I agree with you 100%, though, that guys like Jack Jones, Malcolm Butler have much higher upside. I still think Jack Jones follows that path where, like I always say, Thanksgiving, right? Like once we get to Thanksgiving, I think maybe we see at that point the bye week is what, like early mid-November. It's like November week of November 10th or 11th. Like maybe they come out of the bye and Jack Jones is playing a lot more. I think that's the way that could potentially go. If you ask me week one, I think it's either one of the veterans. It's either Butler or Mitchell. If you ask me week 16, I think we see Jack Jones. I think he gets onto the field as a rookie. Speaking of rookies, that kind of along this lines, last one here that I had written down, rookie impacts. We've talked a little bit about Jack Jones. We talked a little bit about Cole Strange. We texted about this the other day, and I think this is like such an accurate way to talk about Tyquan Thornton. It really feels like he's either going to be Deshaun Jackson or he's going to be John Ross, right? There's like no in between. He's either going to be a stud or he's going to just be a guy that was just fast at the 40 at the combine. Where are your hopes? What are your expectations for Tyquan Thornton going into year one? As it was the case with N'Keal, like this is everybody. You write a Tyquan Thornton post, it's going to go viral, right? Like this is what everybody wants to see, what everybody cares about, and this preseason is the shiny new toy.
I just still think it's a redshirt year. He doesn't have an NFL body yet. They have so much depth ahead of him at the wide receiver position. Now, Devontae Parker struggled to stay on the field. So maybe he gets hurt and another injury or two and it shakes things up. Nelson Aguilar's had some trouble as well in his career, staying healthy, although not recently. So like maybe he's forced into it, but I still feel like it's a redshirt year. I said this to you off the air the other day. We were texting about this. I don't see, and don't panic. Let me explain this. I don't see a world in where Tyquan Thornton is just good. Right? Like, I don't think he's just going to be like a fine receiver. I think he's either going to be great or he's going to be just like nobody and he'll wash out, right?
Yeah. Like
how many guys with that speed and then add in the fact he's 6'3"? How many guys with that physical makeup are just fine or just, he's good enough to be there?
The only guy that I can think of that's just fine is like Robbie Anderson. Right. And
I think Robbie Anderson's more than fine. I like Robbie Anderson. I think he's a number one. He's a lower tier number one. Look, if Tyquan Thornton becomes Robbie Anderson, that's a hit at 50 overall. If Tyquan Thornton becomes Robbie Anderson, that's a hit, right? The guy I think of maybe is like Darius Hayward-Bay. Yeah. But again, that sort of feels, and I don't think he's as good as Robbie Anderson. That sort of feels like a hit, but there's not a lot of guys you can think of that speed and that size that are middle of the pack, right? John Ross, bust. Tyreek Hill doesn't have the size, but the speed elite, right? And I'm not saying he's going to be Tyreek Hill, but I feel like he's either great or he's out of here in 3 years. I just don't see, and this is big picture, not just this year again. I think he redshirts this year, but big picture, that's how I view Tyquan Thornton. It's going to be an extreme. Which way, we will see. A guy with that much natural physical ability, how does he end up just being meh? That's kind of my big take on Tyquan Thornton right now. Yeah, no, I think that's accurate. And throwing out names like McCole Hardman, KJ Hamler, like those guys are a lot smaller than he is, right? Like Tyquan, I don't mean weight, I mean height. Like, so that's, I think, a big difference is those guys have turned into like really just gadget like players. But I think for this year in his rookie season, if you ask me, the Patriots offense has just been so slow over the last couple of years that even if it's just like 20-25% of the snaps, like find some pockets in games to get Tyquan Thornton on the field. Even if you're not targeting him, even if you're not handing the ball to him, like just see how his speed impacts the defense, right? Like just see how that threatens defenses. Maybe it takes the top off. Maybe it attracts the safety to come over a little bit more and it opens something else up for somebody else. I think that just the threat of his 4.28 alone is worth throwing out there 5 to 10 times a game just to see what it does to a defense. And I don't want them to completely redshirt him for that reason, because I think that he's got enough of a threat that at least it's worth something, right? At least it's something that they can impact a defense with. And when I know we say it all the time and other people say it, but when they throw out Myers and Bourne and Aguilar and Hunter, like
I know Aguilar's got some speed. I know Bourne plays faster than he times, but ultimately that's a slow offense, comparatively speaking, right? So that's what I'm talking about. Is I think Tyquan Thornton on speed alone can be a factor in some capacity, and I think that that's worth playing him and keeping him active on game day.
We talk about Nelson Aguilar being fast, and he's fast for the NFL, but he's like 4.4, like mid 4.4s, which is fast. The average wide receivers are like high 4.4, low 4 to mid 4.5. I would even say low to mid 4.5 is like the average receiver, right?
Yeah, he's above average speed, but he's not 4.28.
Tyquan Thornton, is 4.2. I don't know the last time the Patriots had this kind of speed. I think Brandon Cooks was like a 4.3 guy. Yeah, but you may have to go all the way back to Bethel Johnson. Like this is Nelson Aguilar is fast. Tyquan Thornton's different.
So Nelson Aguilar's 4.42 is in the 82nd percentile for all wide receivers at the combine. That's not like guys that actually made it in the league, though, right? There's some guys that were just really good at the combine. So it's above average speed, but we're talking with Tyquan Thornton, we're talking about 99th percentile.
99.9th percentile. Like this is, the fact he got 95 speed rating on Madden is kind of BS. But
yeah. So
I was going to say we'll do the Madden ratings another time, but I don't get to torture that with you anymore. At least not on here. I can still do it in person.
There you go. That's true. I still get the text messages of the latest Patriot Madden rating, trying to look for my take on it. So I love it though. I hate it, but I love it. It's a love-hate relationship with Madden ratings. All right, before we wrap, we got to do Boston Sports Minute, right? Like final show. Like how can we not? I know the people want it. Some of the people, I should say, want the Boston Sports Minute. Alex, not much going on in Boston sports right now. Just the Red Sox who are on the All-Star break. But what's your take about the Red Sox when they come off the break? And look, we've been back and forth on the Red Sox, or at least I have. I think
but you wanted to say it. You almost said it.
You've been pretty steady that the Red Sox are who we thought they were. What's your take, though, on how they come back after the break?
They're 2 games out of playoff spot right now.
Yeah.
They're down their best starting pitcher. And for everybody saying Sale's going to come back in September, if you look at the timeline, there's a real narrow window. So it's actually worse than it looks. There's a real narrow window for him to come back of about 8 games. 3 of those 8 games are in Toronto, which he can't pitch. So realistically, he probably has to come back after that Toronto series, which would line him up in the last series of the year, which is against the Rays at Fenway. They might be out at that point. And you're not going to throw him if you're out. So not to say Sale's the be all end all, but I think they were counting on him to be a big part of the improvement. You can leave, forget Dominic Smith. He's not good.
Yeah.
If you wanted to just get a first baseman, so you have a first baseman, the time to do that was in March, not now. Way too late.
At this point, and you know way more about his progress than I do. I know he's been hurt, but if they want to, isn't Tristan Cassius just do Tristan Cassius in August?
There's some lingering issues with his injury. I think if he was fully healthy, he'd be up. And now you're getting to the point where if they're going to be out of it enough, they might not bring him up so they don't burn service time, which would be the right thing to do at that point. It should have never gotten to that point. But if it gets that point, the one other thing I'll say on the Red Sox, the Matt Olson offer for Rafael Devers.
Oh, terrible.
They think he's dumb enough. And credit to him, he's not. He knows his value.
Yeah. Oh, he laughed at it.
I'm glad he took it. I'm glad he laughed at him. I'm glad he took it personally. Yeah. And by the way, Red Sox fans, they think you're dumb enough to think that's the way to run a baseball team that wants to win. Yeah. They think you're dumb enough to see that, get on their side, and go and spend $15 for a Miller Lite.
Yeah.
Red Sox fans should take that personally. It's the same freaking thing as John Lester and as Mookie and Xander and now Devers. The lack of ability to keep homegrown talent. The last true homegrown cornerstone player they kept is Dustin Pedroia. That was over a decade ago. And don't tell me Christian Vasquez. Yeah. I love Christian Vasquez. I do. I think he's an underrated player. He's not that level of player. If Christian Vasquez is the best player you're keeping, quit. Give up. It's sad. And the only silver lining, and you know me, Evan, I like to put a positive spin on things. Here's my positive spin on if and probably when Rafael Devers leaves. We don't have to go through this again for a while because they don't have another potential franchise cornerstone budding superstar to cheap out on and let walk. Maybe it's Cassis, maybe it's Marcelo Mayer. That's 7 or 8 years down the road at this point if those guys pan out. Devers was signed by Ben Cherington. Mookie Betts was drafted by Ben Cherington. Xander Bogaerts, believe it or not, was actually a Theo Epstein guy. The wells run dry. Dave Dombrowski completely tapped out the farm system, and Chaim Bloom's pretty much putting it all on his ability to draft and develop. And then either those players come up and succeed or they get traded for capable players. That's what you're relying on right now. When Betts left, there was still Bogaerts and Devers. That's not the case right now. The cupboard's dry if Devers leaves. It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. And it's teetering to the point. I'm not there yet because
unless they get Juan Soto. If they get Juan Soto, so
they're not going to get Juan Soto. It's teetering to the point where you start to question whether or not you really want John Henry to be the owner of the Red Sox. Like, I'm not fully there yet because I think that a lot of the time the grass is always greener, right? Like you look at it and it could be worse. It could be Jeremy Jacobs, right? It could really be worse. But you look at John Henry, and I do think there's a lot of validity to the take that he's got Liverpool, he's got the Penguins. They're supposedly trying to bring a NBA team to Las Vegas as a part of an expansion. That would be John Henry or what's it called, Fenway Sports Group or whatever, led ownership. These other entities that he has, it's very clear that the Red Sox are no longer his sole focus. And look, I know that Robert Kraft, for example, has other business ventures, but the Patriots are his only team other than the Revs, which doesn't count because the payroll's not high enough, right? So Robert Kraft is sinking all of his money in terms of sports management into the Patriots. And now that Henry's got his hands in all these different pots, it's clear that it's not the sole focus. And if he's going to go out there and he's going to pay Mo Salah, $40 million a year to stay at Liverpool, but he won't give the money to Rafael Devers, like, it's staring right at you, Red Sox fans, where his priorities lie. So I'm teetering on that with John Henry. I got my eye on him. I don't know if it matters enough to him anymore. Like, he's turning into, when they first bought the Red Sox, he was a machine. Like, he wanted to be the guy that broke the curse, right? Like, he wanted to deliver a championship. Now it feels like he's like in that Jeremy Jacobs territory where all he wants to do is be competitive to sell beers and sell tickets to Fenway Park, right? Like, that's sort of the way it's going now. And Red Sox fans shouldn't take that. And I'm also a little bit fed up really quickly with, Sale's coming back and Evaldi's coming back and Whitlock's coming back. Now I'm hearing news about James Paxton, like, making a return. And like, give me a break. Like, none of these guys are coming to save the season.
It's too little too late.
Right. I was optimistic that Chris Sale might, but then of course he's broken already within 2 starts. So, I don't think so anymore, obviously. These other guys are not coming to save the day. Like, James Paxton returning in August is not going to make the Red Sox a World Series contender. Like, it's just not going to happen. So it stinks that the Red Sox do this. It stinks that this is even a conversation with Rafael Devers. Like, this should absolutely be a done deal. I will say, though, the Yankees, I don't think they'll ever let Aaron Judge actually walk, but they're kind of going through it with Aaron Judge a little bit too, right? With arbitration and contract negotiations and stuff like that. We see what's happening with the Nationals and Juan Soto. Like, there's not a lot of the league right now is kind of struggling to ink these contracts with their superstar players. So I guess they can give them that caveat, but I'm still done with that. All right. And no Red Sox Celtics or Bruins takes really right now. I don't think. So we're really in the dead of the offseason there. But Red Sox, that wraps up the Boston Sports Minute. We'll go and wrap this up now. And now I don't even know what to say. Like, I don't even know what to say to wrap up the show, because this is definitely the worst part about this right now is saying goodbye to everybody. I think I can say that, Alex, you're going to be on the pod on Tuesday, though, right? I guess so.
Somebody in the comments said they're looking forward to reading your articles in the Nantasket Beach Tribune. It's actually the Whole Times. It's the name of that newspaper, not where Evan's going, but it is the Whole Times. Yeah,
the Whole Times. I mean, come on.
That's a newspaper. Right. I've read it.
Get it right. It's the whole time. So that's yeah.
Actually, I don't know. The Nantasket Beach Tribune might also be a thing. I don't know about that. Evan's not going there though. As much as I'm sure he would love that. Yeah, I'll be here on. I don't know. So I don't know what the case will be if we'll do Tuesday or because we're doing a show every day during camp. We'll just hit the ground running on Wednesday, the first day of camp, and do Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So follow me on Twitter at Real Alex Barth. Follow Patriots CLNS for the update. I'll be back either Tuesday or Wednesday next week. I just don't know what the schedule is. Yeah, maybe we'll do a full hour, just me on the Madden ratings on Tuesday, and then we'll get into it on Wednesday.
There we go. You can carry the hour by yourself. I have faith in you. And I saw earlier when we were talking and reminiscing earlier. Yeah, I'll pop in from time to time. I won't leave Alex completely hanging, and I'll come in and say what's up from time to time. So don't worry about that. I'll definitely try to make some guest appearances. And again, I can't thank everybody enough. I can't thank you enough, Alex, for doing this with me, even though you have a day job, a full-time job, and you still came back and did this with me. So I really appreciate that. And we'll see where this goes in terms of our futures of hopefully working together again on the air. It's here soon. So thank you so much, everybody.
I just want to say again, like I'm seeing the comments again, like the fact that this means so much to you guys, like that's ultimately the coolest part about this.
Yeah.
Yes. And I hope you guys keep watching. I feel like I'm saying this as if people are going to leave. I hope you guys don't leave and you keep watching the show. But that's the coolest part about this is, when I see people talk about this, like I see people refer this on Reddit or on Twitter or whatever as like a podcast for people to listen to and people looking for Patriots podcasts. Like that's the coolest thing. So I'm not going anywhere. I'll still talk to you guys, but I'll just use this as a chance to say it really means a lot to see those kind of comments. And I appreciate you guys. And on behalf of the podcast, Evan, and on behalf of the listeners, best of luck to you with what's next. And you deserve it. You're going to kill it.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't agree with you more about what you said about it meaning so much to people. The number one question that I've gotten since I announced that I was leaving CLNS is what's happening with the podcast. People telling me you got to keep doing the podcast. Like that is just so cool. I get sent to me a lot, like on Reddit, like what's the best Patriots podcast, and our name pops up. Like that's just so cool. Like I can't even begin to state how cool that is. So we appreciate you guys. I'll make my announcement on Monday. All right. The long national crisis will be over soon. Okay. I know everybody's busting my chops about milking it and not making this.
For what it's worth, I tried to get him to announce it on the podcast. I wanted him to do that, but I
thought about it. I did think about it. All right. But until next time, I don't know when next time will be, but next time will be. All right, I'll put it to you that way.
Or next time for hopefully then it's Barth and Lazar, which was at one point the working name of the show. So until Barth and Lazar.
There you go. Signing off until Barth and Lazar. I'm Evan Lazar. He's Alex Barth. We will see you guys very soon, and
I'll see you next week.
Alex will see you next week, and we'll both see you next week out at training camp. So keep it right here for all your Patriots training camp coverages. See you, everybody, and thank you again so much, and we'll see you soon.